Hey, Caesar, maybe we'll do a quick mic check while we're waiting for Mark.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, thanks. How are you?
Just trying to get my computer to use Twitter again. They got to fix the desktop app, man. Using like Android emulators is stressful.
I always say that if we can get all of that technical stuff out of the way in the beginning, then it hopefully could be smooth sailing from the get-go.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just Twitter. Twitter is good for this, and it's also bad for this, you know.
Right? No, I hear that. So it looks like we're waiting on Mark still. If he ran into some issue and maybe got preoccupied or held up with something, maybe we'll go ahead and reschedule if you're okay
Yeah, I'm okay
with that.
for either. I'm in no rush right now. I've got nothing that I need to do in the next little while because I just got back in town. So I don't mind waiting for him. But if he is not like something has come up and he's not going to show, then yeah, maybe we'll reschedule then.
Okay, I know you probably have some questions about carbon that you want to ask, and I know I just have some questions in general. We did a spaces previously, and it was about content creation and kind of just some tips and things to get some DeFi users kind of more involved in the space, and that seems to be something that they're really interested in going in that direction. So I know I have some questions for you as well, but
Yeah, yeah, that's what I kind of thought what we were going to do is just kind of
mhm.
like shoot around and kind of talk about what DeFi, what's new in DeFi, and then like kind of the issues with adoption and stuff like this, right?
Well, it's kind of fascinating. I mean, what you're doing. Okay, so maybe while we wait for Mark, and if we want to reschedule, then we can. But for the listeners that we have on here, if you don't mind, maybe just we went from mic check to conversation. So let's give them a little bit of an idea of what it is that you do. And I'm going to share one of your videos that you made for Carbon. Um, while you do that, I'm going to go ahead and pin it to the top really quickly.
Yeah, sure. Well, basically, I'm at heart, I'm kind of like a fundamentals investor. I'm not very good at like predicting trends and just like speculating on token prices and stuff like that. So what I've always tried to do was understand the system of each individual project. And that's where I believe the core is, and that's where I believe the true value is. It's not in like token pump prices and fast yield and fast gains and stuff like that. The actual use case of DeFi is found in the uses of these different projects and how they can make the systems better and stuff like that. So what I always try to do is I try to my best to always read the docs. I always read the docs. If there's no docs, then maybe I'll have to read mediums, but like I don't usually in my videos I don't talk about like price action. I don't talk about tokenomics in the sense of how many tokens there are, like circulating supply, max supply, and stuff like team allocation and stuff like that. Like these are all important things, and if you are going to invest in a token, then you should look at it. But to me, that's where it kind of crosses the line into financial advice, right? So I
Oh,
try to just I'm sorry, what? So I
no,
try to just
I
explain, yeah. I try to explain like what the project system does, right? Like how it and it's worked out for me in the sense of like, I haven't really lost a lot of money in using products, but I've lost lots of money in speculating on token prices, right? So that's basically like I just try to understand, where does the yield come from pretty much. And if I can understand that, then I can explain it. And then in order for me to explain it, I have to understand it. So it's kind of like a feedback loop where I force myself to educate myself, and then I become a better investor myself, as well as sharing it with other people, because a rising tide floats all boats in a sense, right? So that's pretty much what I do. Yeah, I'm kind of notorious for, or not, maybe not notorious, but famous for flowcharts. I make a lot of flowcharts. I show like visually what's going on in the engine of the machine. So that's basically what I do.
Well, and it's fantastic too. Like I'm actually kind of curious, and I shared one of your flow charts. This one is the one that you made for carbon. I think I
Mm.
was what really caught my attention was how quickly you caught on to it, because these are some new concepts that really haven't been available in DeFi before, really spoken to. Like there was a patent, a provisional that needed to be filed first. And so I personally was expecting it to be a little bit more difficult of a like, concepts to grasp, but it wasn't long after we actually announced carbon that all of a sudden your video was out and you grasped it really well. Do you make the flow charts? Did you start making these on your own to grasp these concepts, or is this something that you just found might be more helpful to your subscribers or your audience?
Well, in order to make the flow chart, I have to really like study the project, right? Like I can't just throw the flow chart together. I can't read. I'll read the entire white paper or documentation or whatever it is, and then I'll start making the flow chart. So when I'm making the flow chart, then I notice things that I didn't understand. Like, oh, well, how did this thing go over there? Or how did this token become that? Or whatever the use case is. So the flow chart helps me to solidify the understanding. And then I can narrate the flow chart more better because I've gone through it twice per se, right? But the other thing is like I've done like hundreds of these things, right? Like although carbon is very different and innovative and it's a new use case, right? And I have some thoughts on like innovation as well, but in the sense of like although it's new, there is fundamentals of it, and there is like kind of comparisons to other things I've covered or other things I've researched that I can kind of get a better understanding quicker. I think it's probably a case of just I've done my homework and I've educated myself in DeFi to the extent that I'm able to quickly grasp these things. I think so. Like I'm not, I've hundreds of projects that I've done videos on, like at least 400, right? But then there's all the projects that I read and this is not really innovative enough for me to make a video. So like I like to joke around with people and say, like I have a master's in DeFi, but I haven't because I haven't really produced anything, so I can't say I have a PhD in DeFi, right? Because I haven't added really to the ecosystem in a sense, right? I like to joke about this, but yeah, so I think that's why I grasp it, just because I've done my homework and I'm good at understanding systems and flows, and I guess I have a pretty good short-term memory. Long-term memory is pretty bad though.
No, you said probably 400 videos. I mean, I was looking at your YouTube and you've been doing this for at least 2 years now, right?
Mhm. Yeah, 2 years. Yeah, I've
Two,
been doing it for. I'm sorry.
no, 2 years. Go ahead. Do you have a
No, I just
finance
no.
background to grasp these things a lot easier?
I'm sorry. One more time. Can you go through the question again? I'm on my
Yeah,
phone, so it's out.
no, that's okay. And if it's really bad, then just tell me.
Mm.
But I'm curious what your background is. Like, if do you do this full time, or maybe because you put out a lot of content, and to read through white papers and things, I would think would be somewhat time consuming. Not only to read through them, but to reread and really actually grasp them and create this content.
Yeah, well, I am full-time crypto. I've basically I got into crypto at the bottom of the COVID crash, and I was pretty lucky. Like I kind of really aped it. So I just was able to get nice gains, and I did my homework. I watched a lot of people, a lot of videos, and the whole idea of taking profits, laddering out, laddering in, all of this stuff really. I learned it. It wasn't just like, oh, on the weekend I bought a couple tokens and then came back at the end of the week and tried to like see if I was up or not, right? I'm every day, 8 hours at least, maybe 15 hours a day, just kind of with my thumb on the pulse, like listening, crypto Twitter, reading, talking to people, having little communities and stuff like that, joining communities and stuff, making friends, and just making sure I don't get rugged and stuff like this. So I am full-time crypto, but in my past, I was a teacher, so I'm good at explaining things, but I'm also an an ESL teacher. I have a lot of experience teaching ESL, so I'm good at explaining things like dumbed down, like not like simplifying concepts so that I can explain them to like children who don't even speak English, right? So that's kind of what I historically have been trained to do, but crypto is pretty lucrative if you play it correctly. So I don't do that anymore, but that's what I was doing. Yeah. But yeah, putting in the time, I put in a lot of time, like you said, like at least 8 hours a day, just reading things and talking to people. Spend a lot of time on crypto Twitter as well, but following the right people is important, right? Like if you follow the wrong people that are not giving out, like you want to call it alpha or just data, like just giving out good like content on Twitter is important. Like I don't follow like just like famous people who are generic like famous people. Like I can't think of anybody off the top of my head, but like like Tom Cruise. I don't follow Tom Cruise or some actors or just public figures and stuff like that. So I just follow DeFi project people, right? People who run projects, people who are in the space.
I think even then too, it can be difficult to kind of decipher who you're like distinguish who you actually like who is shilling these projects and who is actually looking to educate you on different innovations that are happening in the industry. And like I wanted to give you that compliment because through the videos that I've watched of yours, they're not shill videos. They really are like very well put together Eli 5 sort of explainers that break down the fundamentals of what these protocols or these projects are doing. So I wanted to give you that compliment. Um, something
Appreciate
that
it.
yeah, absolutely. Something that I was thinking about, it's you have to, like have you started to kind of gain a vision throughout all of the videos that you've made and all the research that you're doing of trends that are happening, not even as they're happening, but kind of a direction that you see DeFi headed in?
Well, the thing I think that DeFi, there's the issues that I have with DeFi is a lot of people. It's like a double-edged sword. It has a good and a bad. Like there's a lot of like forking of other people's projects, right? So they'll fork their project and they'll iterate on it. And this has a good thing and a bad thing. Like first of all, it forces the teams that create projects to to stay on top of things, like to keep going. If they slow down, then someone will just fork them and put a new like tokenomic feature or something on it, and then just basically vampire attack them, like what SushiSwap did a long time ago to Uniswap, right?
Right.
So like that kind of aspect of DeFi is very good for the development and the innovation of the system, but then it also it kind of really messes with people's like loyalty, right? Like people are not loyal to teams; they are loyal to APY pretty much, right? And
Right.
that's kind of cancerous in a sense, but at the same time, like teams are like if you're able to produce a project that is efficient and has real yield in it somehow, then people will invest in your project, and then you just have to keep them happy by constantly building. So I think it's a good feedback loop, even though there's a lot of bad trends and stuff like the side chains all popping up with like tons of forks and stuff like this, and just it's cheaper to come use this, but they don't. A lot of people don't realize how decentralized a lot of some of the side chains are. Not a lot of them, but some of them, right? And some of them are good, but yeah, like I don't know. I think it's like the long term scale, like long term vision of DeFi. I think what we need, we're missing is like payment structures so people can do real world things, and then also just ease of use. Like some of the really good projects that I really like, it's difficult for people to just kind of turn it on and use it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
so, and
Especially new
that's the thing. If it's too easy to use, then it's probably doing nothing too. So it's very hard to like it's very hard to fix this problem. So yeah, I don't know. Like I think if we can get some real world connections, like especially with like the fall of FTX and the centralized exchange, issues. Like, I think, in my opinion, like there needs to be like centralized entities that connect the DeFi world to the real world, right?
Right.
But like, because that's just the governments are not going to allow like money to just be sent from the blockchain to like a store owner. Like you can do it peer to peer. You could talk to him and be like, "Hey, listen, I want to buy this stereo. Let me send you some ETH," and he can say yes, and you can do it, right? But the actual system needs to go through some sort of regulated entity for it to be mainstream and fully used, right? So it's just a matter of like, how can this work, right? And I had this idea a little while ago about what might work, and that was instead of a centralized exchange, because the centralized exchanges are like gambling houses, right? For the most part, right? Leveraged up, like speculating, right?
Right.
And we don't really need that. But the reason why they have that is so that they can have a revenue stream, like have a system where they actually make money. Because nobody wants to pay a lot of money to turn their crypto into fiat or turn their fiat into crypto. If it's a high cost to off ramp and on ramp, then people won't do it, right? So they can keep the prices down of off ramping and on ramping by supplying this service of like this leveraged up uh, um, gambling or speculating system. But what I was thinking that people could, like centralized exchanges could do, is because they are regulated and tradfi in a sense, they could perhaps offer like selling services. Like, so like instead of like an Amazon website that would just like accept crypto and then convert it to fiat and pay the retailer in fiat, and you would just pay some service fee for that. I think this would work really well.
Mm-hmm.
And like you wouldn't have to like leave all your crypto on, Amazon. You would leave it off on chain in self custody. But when you wanted to buy something, you would just send that amount of ETH or whatever USDC or whatever token you use into that payment platform, and then they would take care of the banking system, right? And it could have KYC as well, right? So that they know who's buying that product if that's what the government needs or wants for that case. So I can kind of see this happening in the near future. Centralized exchanges or centralized projects just kind of providing that bridge in a more seamless way. And then, of course, other way as well. People could just instantly buy, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever they want through these as well, right? And just have it. It immediately goes from fiat to your on-chain wallet instead of, or they would custody it for you until you decided to withdraw it. But they could maybe get service fees that way, like Visa, like a store. Instead of a store, when they sell you something on Visa, they have to pay a service fee to Visa. So they could take those service fees from the retail stores or what have you. This is kind of what I've been thinking about, but it's way beyond my ability to build or influence to happen,
Do you think, you mentioned the fall of FTX, and I don't generally touch on that too much, but because you're so involved in everything going on, I mean, 8 to 12 hours, 7 days a week, I mean, that's a lot of research and involvement that you've got. Do you think it's going to be a while before the space or the industry kind of has trust in sexes again, or do you kind of see it like I hear it both ways? I also hear like everybody has short-term memories and it's going to be fine, and I'm kind of curious what your thought is on that.
Well, I never used FTX, and I never felt a need to. I've always used Kraken and Binance, and although Binance has its share of FUD, it gets a lot of FUD. I
Right.
do think CZ, and being at the head of Binance, he's an OG degen, right? So although he's running a centralized exchange with a centralized blockchain as well, right? So although he's doing this centrally, and he's getting a lot of FUD with this, but I don't think he's invested in the ecosystem to such an extent that he's not, in my opinion, looking for like short-term gains, or he's not like doing idiotic things like like giving out. I don't know. This is obviously presumptuous. I don't know. Never talked to him, but in my opinion, he wouldn't be. You can't compare him to SBF. Like SPF was a kid who was like playing a video game and just had points, and it was just like throwing the points around and like, oh, I can win if I just keep playing, right? That's the way I kind of look at what he did. So of course, a lot of people, it's terrible what happened, but I don't think like the centralized exchanges are gonna fail or just like dwindle away. Like obviously people are pulling money out, but
Right.
going on chain or even going back to fiat, there's a lot of that happening, right? But I don't think the centralized exchanges are going to collapse. Like especially with like proper like transparency of the proof of reserves and stuff, and the whole idea of like now centralized exchanges are like poking at each other's reserves. Like I see Jesse from Kraken a lot, just saying, yeah, that's not done right, CZ. You got to do this, and that kind of like everybody looking out for each other really helps us a lot. Like I
Absolutely.
see, yeah, like even in DeFi, like if I had a project and I was a dev team and I saw an issue with another project, I think it's very important for us to point that out to each other. Like, oh, like it sometimes sounds like FUD, like, like hate on the competitor, right? But it's good for the system as well. Like, oh, look what they did here. They shouldn't do that. And then it becomes very public and known. I think that's a good thing. So I don't think the centralized exchanges are going to die. People like it. The experience is very smooth and easy. But GMX and all these other like on-chain trading platforms, leverage trading platforms are doing well now. So perhaps they might be able to, and especially with like Arbitrum and Optimism and all these other side chains, like they might be able to replace them. But like I said, they can't replace the on-ramps and off-ramps.
Right.
So there's always going to be that. And like a person who just hears about crypto, is like Ethereum, I want to buy some Ethereum. The chances of you telling him, okay, download MetaMask, send money through this to the centralized exchange, off ramp it to like to the not off ramp it, like withdraw it to on chain, and then you can go to GMX on Arbitrum, send it up to Arbitrum, and then you can trade. People are not going to do this. They're just going to be like, oh, well, what's easy? This guy's a bank. So maybe these centralized exchanges just need to have better regulation, more transparency. And I think if we push them to do that as an ecosystem, they will do it. Like if everybody just starts pulling all their money off of Binance until Binance produces a fully transparent proof of reserves that's acceptable, then that's good, right? Then people will go back and use it because the experience is good. It's gasless, there's no gas fees. So I think people would use it, but I don't really speculate. I don't really trade. I don't swing trade. I don't do any TA beyond the like a big picture TA. So I don't think people. I can't speak for traders. Like I don't. They all say the experience on a SEX is way better than on chain trading, and it makes sense to me because you have to wait for your transaction to go through, whereas on a SEX it's instant, right? So
Right.
so I think traders will always do it, but maybe not. Like maybe there are use cases for both. Like short-term speculators, maybe they will continue to use the centralized exchange so they can get their leverage and they can get their instant finality, or to that extent, like their instant execution. So maybe I don't think I'm not too worried about the sexes, but again, I didn't have any money on FTX,
Which
and
fair.
I only ever use like Binance or Kraken to off ramp and on ramp. You know,
Right.
so
You've
that's
seen
yeah.
though trading protocols, like the on-chain trading protocols when that all kind of started. I don't know if it was just me because Carbon is a trading protocol, you know.
Mm,
I feel like there are more and more that seem to be coming about, especially with Uni V3 and their concentrated liquidity and the way that that's been established, and different protocols that are kind of integrating with that and offering different strategies to help kind of maximize a like a liquidity provider's experience or returns. So I see a lot more of that. I'm curious if you are also, and you mentioned Arbitrum and Optimism. I feel like Arbitrum really has a lot of that going on at the moment. A lot of DeFi.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Like for me, if I'm going to do I really like carbon and I've spoke of it a lot and you guys know I like it. And for me, it makes a lot more sense because I'm more of a long-term investor. So I can set those price ranges and I can set them and forget them. And I don't need to worry about, CZ coming out and saying that he's not solvent or he doesn't have the reserves, right? There's none of that worry. So for me, it's definitely a use case. And there's a lot on Arbitrum of especially because GMX went there and GMX is it's functioning perfectly, right? So it's a little complicated. Like I've done a video on it as well, and I can't remember exactly how it works, so I can't speak on how it works exactly. I'd have to watch my video again, and then I can be like, "Oh, yeah, this works, right? This is how it works." And but there's been a lot of trading platforms around, on all of the chains. Like I can think of some on Phantom, I can think of some on Polygon. There's there's I guess, and then there's GMX forks now I see popping up, and so I think you're right. I think degens, that's one of the problems with FTX was it wasn't 100% retail money. It was a lot of real degens who just know better than to put their net worth or their crypto on an exchange, right? So now that these alternatives are popping up, and you have the possibility to perform these trades, these limit orders, or whatever you want to do on chain much more efficiently and just easy, then I think more and more degens are not going to put their money into the centralized exchanges and use them just for that use case of ramping on and off. So yeah, I think it's pretty nice. I think we're in for a good run on the whole the centralized exchanges. But I do think, like I said, the other way, the people coming from the real world, they're going to use the centralized exchanges. It's a big change to go from using, I don't know, JP Morgan to using, GMX. It's a big swing, right? So people will go in steps. Like even me, when I first started, I started buying crypto on, what was the first place I bought crypto? eToro or something, some stock exchange where you could also buy crypto and just speculate on the
eToro has all of those.
Sorry?
I said I think eToro kind of has all of the above, right? They're kind of like a one-stop shop, no matter what. There.
Yeah, you can buy commodities, everything. The prices, the fees are astronomical, right? But they did eventually allow it for withdrawing on chain, and I did exit, when I finally did my homework and started to trust the idea of crypto on chain. But I think this use case, this sector, needs to be there, needs to be healthy, and needs to be done correctly so that the real world can come in. The normies can come to DeFi via these platforms. It's just we have to be more meticulous on their safety and their transparency, because a centralized company that is not publicly traded doesn't need to report anything, right? And that has to change, right?
I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier also with even just the forks on chain, if you just fork a project. We used to do a DeFi safety series with the Rug Doc, and she was saying one of the biggest things about forking these different protocols is that the devs don't know how to do different upgrades and things of that sort. They don't really actually understand the code. So it really opens them up to different exploits or vulnerabilities. And so there's that danger within that also. And for that adoption to have to happen, to have an overabundance of these sorts of protocols is really not even just a deterrent, but it's kind of dangerous to the industry.
Oh yeah, totally. I don't want to pick on anyone, but what you've said really rings true to me. And like I can give an example that just really is really quite bad, and that is Scream on Phantom. They forked Cream Finance, and they set a perimeter to 0, thinking that they are turning off the collateral factor, so making that token have a collateral factor of 0, so that nobody can borrow against it. But setting that setting to 0 caused it to be infinity. So you can,
Oh,
so they didn't know that they were doing that. And then of course, the anonymous degens just like, oh, I can borrow as much as I want against this shit token. So boom. And they just emptied it, drained it, right? So you're totally right. Like people, the teams who just fork, because forking's pretty easy. Like I have forked like Yearn vaults that I use for my own use case. I have them whitelisted so like people don't join me, right, inside them. And like I forked them in the sense of I didn't just like fork the code and deploy it. I, forked the code, read it all, changed some things, started playing with it, testing it, and then deployed it. And now I'm using them for my own kind of like, just long-term positions that I want to, uh, aggregate or like, just, yield farm with, right? So, but I like people are doing it like because they can make lots of money just by, and it's easy money for a team to fork and then just chill, right? So, but on the other hand, there are teams who forked code and then got wrecked, but they still keep pushing. They still keep working it and understanding it better and stuff like this. So there's a bad part and a good part, like of forking, yeah.
so you mentioned yield farming. You kind of do that on your own. I'm curious, that was so big with DeFi summer. Do you still see this as something that is, sustainable in the space right now? Are you seeing less of this?
Well, like there's a project called Beefy Finance that is like all over the place, and they just basically like you're in version 1, just chewing up like tokens and producing like compounding, auto compounding. It As long as there's people forking and people are trending, I don't think it's like super healthy, but it's still there. And if you don't like play it, then you're kind of missing out on some use cases. Like
Right.
the vaults that I created, I mine doesn't chew up all of the reward token. It chews up some of it. So it compounds some of it, and I can change the percentage. So it chews up some of it, and then some of it it puts into another vault to give me voting power, so to speak. So like I've done like, because instead of doing it manually, I've just made it automated. Like if you're yield farming like some reward token, you should be selling some of it. That's how you stop yourself from just, that's how you play it safe, right? You take some profits, but maybe you speculate on some of it. So instead of doing it manually every week, I just have a few positions that I just have it, the keepers basically doing it for me, right? Once a week or a couple times a week, just farming that. But I do think like, the whole like yield farm and the yield farm system of DeFi Summer has changed a lot. Like there's a project on Arbitrum that's really interesting, and it's called Camelot, and it's just an AMM, right? It has like Uniswap version and also stable swap LPs. But the key thing that they do that's really interesting is there's two things that it's really interesting. And the first one is they ask users to time lock the LPs instead of time locking the reward token. So if you time lock the LP, you get boosted rewards. And that's very interesting. So, you're actually creating a healthier ecosystem by, not allowing people to like you don't have to time lock it, but you get boosted rewards if you time lock. Like say you put ETH USDC onto this AMM, you're supplying like trading routes for those two tokens, and if you time lock it, you'll get more reward tokens. And then the other thing they did, which is interesting, is they split the reward into like different percentages. So I think most of them, maybe all of them, are like 80-20. So 80% is like X Grail, which is like kind of like VE locked tokens, like time locked governance tokens, vesting tokens, right? And then 20% is like liquid tokens. So they're giving you that option right away. Oh, you can sell 20 every time you claim, but 80% you have to wait until your vesting schedule is done. There's a whole bunch more features as well, but like this is kind of like the devs are looking at DeFi summer and saying, oh well, what happened? What was the problem? Well, the problem was
Right.
everyone just farming the hell out of everything and just sending everything to zero, right? So they try to innovate this and change it, make it like so, like the yield aggregators cannot just come in with capital and just chew up the governance token to zero, right? So there's innovation, and I think this kind of idea, like there's no reason that like a yield farm is not inherently bad or useless, or it does what it's supposed to do. It attracts liquidity, right? And but the problem is that it attracts liquidity at the cost of the governance token holders. But if when systems like this kind of come into play and they give out vesting tokens instead of liquid tokens, and people still farming it, then liquidity is still attracted, then that's a good thing, right? So I think it just requires like innovation and new ideas to make yield farming continue to go, because yeah, people want tokens, people farm them, people want APY. Like if you just put a project with, mind you, Uniswap is a good example of just like there's no incentives there, right? But they have tons of liquidity, right?
Right.
So it's a weird one. It's a weird question.
Well, I think anytime we can kind of see innovation happening in the space, especially when it happens, it's like you're learning from a past experience, because DeFi Summer, I know I mean, even for Bancor, we've spoken about this, it had results that were, I mean, I can say less than ideal, and that would kind of be an understatement, but I mean, they
Yeah.
were harmful to a lot of different protocols and things that really participated in this, but it was so difficult not to, because that's where everybody was drawn to. It was the incentives and the liquidity mining. But I think, when you find that even balance, you can offer these sorts of incentives and do it in an innovative way, like you were just speaking about with Camelot, to where it kind of boosts the ecosystem and it turns more into a healthy sort of aspect than it would be unhealthy. Then I think anytime that happens in the industry or in the space, it's a positive for sure.
Oh yeah, totally. Like what Sushi Swap did, like Zero X Maki, or not Zero X Maki. What was his name again? Chef Nomi, right? Yeah, Chef Nomi. What he did for DeFi was like unparalleled. Like it was such a simple idea to just add sushi rewards, and then they started to develop the idea that sushi could be a fee collection mechanism and so forth, like X Sushi, right? But like just what he did, he totally changed like DeFi completely. You know what I mean? Like the idea of like I don't know why Uniswap still hasn't done anything with the Uni token, but when they airdropped it, like I of course I kept some of it, but I was just like, it does nothing, and it's to this day it does nothing. Like it doesn't even have voting rights. So I don't understand what like they say it does, but nothing ever is voted with it, right?
Right.
Nothing I'm aware of. So like I think it's important that projects do, they do their research, they understand the pitfalls and the problems that came about, and then they build on those, they iterate them, they fix them, and then develop and then deploy. So like I totally like, projects that are like grassroots, like projects that come out of DeFi. Like a good example is like Gearbox. Gearbox is a good example. These guys, like Ivan, he's full-fledged degen. He was around in DeFi Summer, and he's developed his, he brought up version 2, and I really like this idea because I know that he knows kind of what's going on. He's not just a team who got a bunch of VC money, produced a fancy looking
Right.
flash website, and then came out, right? Like it's the same with Bancor too. Like I know you guys have been around for a long time, And like you said, like there have been some like less than ideal circumstances, but like it's still like there's the dev teams, the teams, they're doing their research, they're thinking, they're not just like trying to like just fork something and throw it out and just, oh, that worked, so let's just copy it and put it out, like the whole like ohm fork system, the whole ohm fork trend where there was like 50 ohm forks where they were just
That was
literally
serious
copy.
for
I'm sorry.
that was serious for a minute. I felt like they kind of came out of nowhere. All of a sudden there were so many different ohm forks, and it didn't matter what chain you were on, they were there.
Oh yeah, yeah, and they had no innovation. It was just basically like the same thing with a different picture, right? Yeah, it was there was a little like I did see a little bit of innovation in some of them, but I didn't really like Ohm. Like it again, Ohm changed things big time too, like just like Sushi Swap, right? Like they introduced the idea of bonds, right? And you know, kicking the can down the road in a sense, right? So they did, and then the whole 3-3. Like even now, if you go through Twitter and you just look at projects, you see like people's Twitter like profiles or their names, they still have the like bracket picture bracket, right? The 3-3 in there.
Right.
So it's still it's like it's just part of us now. It's in our blood, so to speak. Like so
It's
they
part of the culture.
exactly. Yeah, it's just a piece of our culture, and I think it's an important piece because it does show. Like, I don't know if you know what chicken bonds are, but they're the hottest new like bond system right now.
Did you just
But
make a recent video on this?
yeah, I did a little while ago. Again, like pretty close after they introduced it, I made a video. So I wouldn't say just made a video. Maybe, but I made it like pretty much the day they launched or the day I knew about it beforehand because someone had messaged me and they were like, hey, we know you like this project. We're building this. And I kind of like, well, wait. I like to wait until things are live or at least very certain that they will be live. And then I make videos. So, yeah, so these chicken bonds are really cool, but I'm not going to explain what they do. But the point is that like, I don't think they would be here perhaps, unless Ohm had successfully shown that DeFi likes bonds, you know? So, and then, the whole like Ohm's like Olympus's like, Olympus Pro, where they allowed projects to kind of use their bond system. And this was very good for a lot of projects as well, like allowing them to try to, curb the dump of their governance token by selling bonds and getting some protocol owned liquidity and stuff like that. So yeah, like there's these innovations that have come about are are a result of just like people looking at the system carefully, playing the game, and then getting ideas on how to change it, as opposed to just like VCs coming in and being like, oh, this project works, let's make the same thing but make the website super nice. We'll pay our JavaScript engineers tons of money and make our website super fancy. So I like I think those are important because that's what gives trust to like normies. Normies come in and they see like a website that's not sleek or tradfi, then they're worried, they're scared, right? Like I've sent people to like ape tax or something, like which is, and he's like, you put your money in this, and I'm like, I'm like, I have to explain to them that the front end doesn't really matter. Like it does in a sense, like, but in essence, it's the contracts underneath that are the important thing. Like a car, like you don't buy a car because the shell is nice. You buy it because the engine's reliable in a sense, right?
It's funny because I think that's probably, we're talking about like mainstream, and there are so many memes and things in the space, especially like different protocols that I think some normies are really hesitant to even take us seriously when these things that are being introduced, these concepts and these innovations are so different, and can make such a difference to so many people, just across the world, just in terms of DeFi alone, um but they just don't understand the actual meme. And it comes back to the culture, I think.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, I have a real world example of this kind of thing. Like, there's this diet that's backed by a lot of research, and of course he's selling his own products, so that's a choice, like how he can monetize his own products. But the diet's called the Bulletproof Diet, and when I first heard about this and I saw the website, I was like, "What's this?" You know, like bulletproof. Like it sounds so like stupid and idiotic, right? But when you read all of his books, you understand that it's like, at least I believe that it's founded in logic and science and research and so forth. But the face of it really causes, like, the whole proverb or adage or whatever it is, where don't judge a book by a cover, but everybody does. So it, but it's not important what's on the cover. What's important is the text that's inside, right? So it's hard to get people to not judge a book by a cover, or not, decide, you know, preconceived conceptions of things based on the outside appearance, right? And
Right.
that's what DeFi is. Like, the front end is the cover of the engine, right? Like, of course there is like more to it. Like, it's not as simple as, like, I've tried, like, JavaScript hell for me. I've tried to learn it. I tried to play with it. It's too much. Like, it's definitely the hardest part about launching a project, other than, like Solidity is way easier to code than JavaScript. That's my point. Like, having the idea and like testing it out and building the smart contracts and stuff like that, that's not easy either, right? Especially, having the idea and then, the math behind it and stuff like that. That's not easy either, right? But like JavaScript is way more, way less friendly than Solidity, right? So like I have a lot of respect for them, but the point is, the important thing is what's going on underneath. And that goes back to my videos. Like, the front end doesn't really show you what's going on underneath in most cases, right? It's just kind of like, you can do this, you can click this, and that something will
It's a
happen.
pretty, and I think that's kind of probably what makes it so difficult too, is it's not like you can just open up the book and get reading. You can't just read about it. A lot of it is the actual security aspect of it. So it's
Mm.
not, a lot of us can go and read through these smart contracts and understand, okay, this is secure because I've just confirmed it for myself. You're kind of going by different audits that have been performed and things of that sort. You're going by people that you trust who are using this protocol or this platform.
Yeah, like, even me, like, I can read some smart contracts. Like I said, I've studied some Solidity, so I can read the smart contract. But for the most of the time, I don't do it because it takes so much time. Like, it's not like reading like the English language, where you can read through the entire system in like a couple hours, if the documentation is there, of course, right? So, but yeah, so like, people, we always uh, the whole ethos or idiom that, don't trust, verify. It's hard when most people cannot do that. They can't verify. They can't read. Like, they open it up, it's like, it looks like Chinese. They can't read it. They don't understand it, and they can't verify it. So a lot of people are doing the whole, like, crowd. Like, oh, a
Right.
lot of people,
Right.
what's the TVL? Oh, the TVL is at $250 million. Well, it must be safer than that one that's at $6 million, even though they're doing the same thing. There's a lot of that going on. And then there's the agility factor of just people, just trying to stay agile. And I'm guilty of it as well, especially at the start of like my career in crypto, is just make sure I'm around. So when there's an announcement, I can be one of the first people to run, right?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
just what DeFi is kind of like. It's hard to verify. It's very hard to verify.
I don't know how much verifying was going on with DeFi Summer. I feel like
Oh,
that was just a
yeah.
balance between everybody everywhere. I
Oh,
think a lot of us have matured along with the space since then. And it kind of comes back to what you were saying earlier, how it's kind of nice where it's not necessarily different developers and things, projects calling each other out. It's more holding each other not necessarily accountable, but maybe looking out for each other a little bit more. Maybe I'm an optimist or, naive to it, but I'd like to think that as the space continues to grow and mature, that you see these different protocols kind of working together. Not everything is going to appeal to everyone, but you kind of see these different layers being built where they offer this. This is kind of one of their shortcomings. And now we've created this to where we can better the user experience and we can get more out of all of this if we're working together and kind of innovating together in the same sort of direction.
Mm. The whole like black hat and white hat hacker thing, I've had a lot of ideas on this because just talking to people and I talk to a lot of devs too, because especially since I produce videos and then they're like, oh, this is a good video, thanks Ceazor, and I'm like, oh, no problem, like I'm farming karma in a sense, right? So I make friends this way. So I've talked to a lot of devs and stuff, and some of my ideas about like how devs can kind of look out for each other is there's this protocol. I'm going to call it a protocol or project, whatever. It's called Immunify. I'm sure you might be aware of it, but
Mm-hmm.
they have the bug bounties where I can put a bug bounty here, and if someone solves that problem, then like if they find an issue with my project, they can get the bug bounty, right? And this is great, right? Because it gamifies the searching for problems, right? But I done a tweet a little while ago and I didn't get engagement from it, but I thought it was pretty clever. And that was that what if like projects, like say some dev is running a project and his project is pretty self-sustaining now and he's making lots of money. So he's kind of idle in a sense. So instead of like farming bug bounties, because that kind of maybe he could farm like a bug bounty credit for himself for his own project. So like instead just say so let's say Bancor. So Mark has some free time, and he finds a problem with another project, and he tells Immunify, and then Immunify can give Bancor a bug bounty as a result of that. Do you know what I mean? Like it has to be the
Mm-hmm.
mathematics and the economics have to be thought of it, but like instead of like having bug bounties out there, instead we could maybe kind of like altruistic, yeah.
And kind of rotate that.
Yeah, so instead of me having to pay for a bug bounty, I can farm, I can do bug bounties, and that gives me boosted like credit on Immunify or something like this. They might need a token to do this. They might need some sort of like free money out of thin air, but like a token, right? So they might need this kind of idea, so to make something like this work. But I think it's doable, like because the black hat hackers, the who knows who they are, right? We don't know, right? Like people always say, they are, basement people in Hong Kong or Russians or North Koreans and stuff like that. And I probably they are, probably they are, but they could also just be people in our space, like, you forked my project and you
Right.
took my TVL. So and then I hacked you. Like that could possibly be happening. I'm not saying that's what happens,
But
but
it's
I wouldn't be surprised if some projects were in that cases. And then, project leaders, they're in a difficult situation as well, like because they want their project to be successful in growth and get adoption and their baby to be used, so to speak, right? But if they have to really draw a line, they can't cross the line into like arrogance or they have to be confident, but they cannot go past confidence into arrogance, because then everybody focuses on them. Like if they start saying, my project's like immune to hacking, you'll never hack it, then people are gonna
of course.
start trying to hack it, right?
It's almost like a challenge now.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's a lot of pride and arrogance and stuff like this into the soup, into the mix, right? So projects need to kind of, but at the same time, like if the leaders don't really talk a lot or don't come out, adoption doesn't grow so much, right? Like projects who have really strong, outspoken team leaders, grow very quickly, right? Like the Frog Nation, right? Like look how big that got, right?
Right. Right. That got really big really fast. I like your Immunify idea. We actually like Bancor uses them. It's too bad that Mark isn't here to actually hear your idea, but I'm gonna pass it along.
Hmm.
It's an interesting one, and it would make sense. It kind of just goes to everybody kind of just working together to kind of better the industry, but that also, they're benefiting directly themselves, or at least their protocol will be.
Exactly. And it does, and
Yeah,
it wouldn't even require like monetization in if it's done properly. If they really think about like I don't know where the money will come from because but it could just be like credits, like points, like they just the points are just inside that Immunify system getting passed around, right? And then but there needs to be money as well because it needs to have it needs to be backed by by money, right? So it can't just be like useless points, like you know, I don't know, monopoly money, right?
right.
otherwise,
It might take
otherwise,
the building on, but like the idea there is solid.
hmm.
So I didn't realize we've already been on the call for an hour. I want to open up to anybody who might be listening if they have any questions for Ceazor. If you don't mind, Ceazor, I'd like to,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm kind of curious, are there a few major trends that you're kind of really keeping an eye on or really aware of, at least in DeFi? I know you do some NFT stuff as well, but with everything that you've been doing, all the research and all the content and the flow charts, is there a sort of direction, a trend that you see us heading in? Your own personal take.
Yeah, I can think of like cool projects that are launched, right? But if you think of DeFi, we have several use cases. There's the lending, right? So you can leverage up, right? Or you can sell things without selling them. Like any kind of lending platform of any sense, like go all the way back to Compound, and then everything that's been changed and developed from there. So I think the whole lending money markets system is pretty healthy in DeFi, and I don't see there needing to be much more. Then there's the stable coins, right? There's a lot of stable coins, and they just keep coming out, US dollar stable coins. And then
Right.
again, there's a lot of health there as well, but there's a lot of innovation too. Like um, one project is called Inverse Finance. They did Dollar. They've done this new FIRM firm where you can like prepay your interest, so you won't get like you won't have to pay later. So it's predictable interest rates, right? So this is interesting. This is clever. But there are also projects out there where you can borrow a stable coin at zero interest. So how does like having, pre-approved interest rates, how does that beat going there and getting a stable coin for no
Right.
interest, right? It's tough, right? But there's use cases there. There's innovation. So stable coins, money markets, and then AMMs. AMMs are good too. Like they're, Andre Cronje's solidly, and it kind of turned things around a little bit. Like said, oh, let's take the fees and give them to the voters, so people will vote on the liquidity that is needed instead of just farming, whatever is like whatever token it like just producing like useless LPs and farming reward tokens. Like there are quite a few LPs on Curve that are useless in the sense of trading volume. There's no trades going through them, but they're still farming CRV and stuff like that. There's quite a few. So but the AMA is nice in the sense of like there could be some new changes. They could think of some new things, but I think the trend right now is to try to like bring what you guys are doing with Carbon and GMX and stuff. Try to bring that on chain so that we don't have to trust the centralized extent. We can get those people because there's a lot of trading volume on those centralized exchanges. There's a lot, right?
Right.
And if we can get those people on chain, then that might be the next trend. But this is quite maybe a little bit late. Like I wouldn't go and buy GMX right now. Wouldn't do it. I would feel that I'm late. I could be wrong. It could do another 100x. It could do anything. I don't know, right? But I just feel late. That's what I feel about that specific project. But forks will come out and people will not be late for those and join them. But something new that I think about is, like I said, the ramping, allowing me to spend my money on something in the real world. This is tough, right? Because it's not just smart contracts. There needs to be legal entity, and I think maybe this will be the next kind of trend, but I don't know. And then NFTs, like I don't really sell, I don't buy, I don't flip NFTs, and I probably should have, because there was a lot of money to be made. But I just don't understand why, a picture becomes so valuable. Like I would never buy art. I would never consider art as a place where I could store my value. I would just think, oh, I'd rather buy something else I understand why the price of it goes up, instead of, because I'm not good at like being, in the crowds of popular people, in the sense of, like in high school, I wasn't like following, famous people and, who's popular and who's not. So that's kind of what NFTs are, in a sense, as far as I understand. And then joining like groups and stuff like that. I think the DAOs are pretty good. They might have a future use case of like, I pitch DAOs to a lot of normie people, in the sense of like you trust these people to make the laws for you, but what if like everybody, like a good example I always say is like, I talked to a real estate agent, and I said, all the real estate laws are created by those people. I don't know who they are, but these politicians. I said, wouldn't the laws for real estate be better created by all of the real estate agents? They just have it like a DAO and they just make the laws. And then the last thing I'm seeing coming up, which is quite good, is like real world assets. There's a project called LandX that really is clever, and what it's doing is it's allowing DeFi DeFi capital, to be lent to farmers to use to produce crops, and then like a futures kind of thing. And then that yield from that crop is given back to the lenders of the capital. So this is a very nice bridge. Like it doesn't allow you to buy corn or or bread or something, but it's giving this capital, this money, this capital to the farmers to do their farmer thing. And then it's very easy, much easier for them to access that. They don't need to go to the bank. They don't need to sit in there. They don't need to make an appointment with a banker. They don't need to show their entire like history, so to speak, of like everything they've ever done. They don't need a credit score. They just, the system is designed to be over collateralized, right?
That's really fascinating. Just to build on that for a minute, just because, you see, like I've heard a lot about the difficulties that farmers are faced with, especially over the last couple of years. So to hear that use case, and then, parametric crop insurance was a big thing, and is a big thing, and offers something so fantastic to farmers. So it's nice to see that kind of taking its actual shape now, with the combination of what is being offered to them.
Yeah. And there's other projects too that are like, like kind of tokenizing real estate, and even like, tokenizing it so you can like own a piece of that real estate, as opposed to having to buy the whole deed. You can own a portion of that deed and
Right.
just be tokenized, and it's anonymous as well, right? So it's not, and there's no need to like go to the bank or join some sort of organization to buy that. So these kinds of ideas, I think, are really important for us in DeFi. If we really want the DeFi and just cryptocurrencies to be successful, I think we need to keep pushing this whole like real world assets, and try to, allow us to buy things. Because like when I talk to my father about crypto over the holidays. One of the things he said, like, is like, if I buy Bitcoin, can I get a coin? Like, can I get a token and put it in
Right.
my safe? And I'm like, well, no, it doesn't work that way. I said there are some places where you could buy like, physical Bitcoin in a sense of like, they could put the seed phrase on some piece of metal, right? And then you could put it in your safe, right? But it's not what Bitcoin is, right?
It's not a gold bar, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Right.
So yeah, like allowing like because what like the gold back like Paxos Gold, the gold backed cryptocurrencies.
Right.
I would much rather buy this because it's liquid. It's very easy to sell. Like if you want to sell your gold bar, you gotta literally drive there with it. So and
And
you can't get yield on it and stuff.
a whole lot more accessible, especially depending on where you are globally. Not
Hmm.
everybody can go drive somewhere and buy a gold bar
Yeah,
or
totally.
gold coin or anything like that. But if you're looking to actually acquire these things, especially real estate market, it's like a lot of people will say that's your way to. And of course, this isn't financial advice at all. It might have been something I've received as financial advice, but you people think about building their own little empires, and they have these rental homes, they'll rent them out, and then this is a sort of passive income. If you aren't in the position to do this, DeFi kind of offers this alternative now, like you were saying, with real estate, to be able to at least partially start building and acquiring these things, even if it is just a fractional ownership, you know?
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And but one of the things that I think about a lot these days is like diversification. I'm pretty heavy into crypto, and like if I wanted to buy like some gold, the thing that kind of holds me back about buying like Paxos Gold is that it's just I might as well buy the shit coin because then I can like yield farm with it and sell it. You know what I mean? So like, because if everything in crypto just like I don't know, like some economic thing or some you know nuclear war, solar flare, or whatever, right? Whatever the reason is, if crypto does get demolished, then that gold-backed stable crypto coin is useless, right? If the safe will just be like, thanks for all the gold, see you later, right? So that it still lacks that ability. Like crypto, in all essence, lacks the ability for you to like actually diversify outside of the crypto ecosystem and hold assets that are not linked to the crypto system. So, but like it's way better to be able to like use your gold to like borrow a stable coin and leverage up or do whatever you can do with that coin. That's way better than just like having gold sitting in your, under your mattress, right? And
Right.
that's why, like, I'm a super degen. Like, I can't. It hurts me so bad to like leave fiat sitting in the bank, dollars, whatever, just sitting there, paying fees to like hold my fiat in their bank. It just drives me crazy. But because it's so easy to get like at least 6, 7, 15% on like a US dollar stablecoin in DeFi. So it's really hard for me to like diversify into real world assets. But it's important. I think like what you said about allowing people to buy the fractional piece, and like there's a lot of places in the world where it's difficult to buy things. Like you just can't, right? Like how am I, even where I live, if I think Europe's in a downtrend right now, but it's going to turn around and that real estate market's going to go up, it's pretty hard to for me to buy that. I'd have to take a plane, go to talk to bankers and all this stuff, and then buy that property. But with DeFi, it could just be literally just click, click, done, right?
Yeah, it makes it so much easier, so much more accessible. The use cases that are opened up through DeFi are are impressive now, but I think, like you were saying, in the future, kind of these trends, once these things are available, it's going to be so much more fluid, and we'll see a whole lot more of that adoption that you were speaking to earlier.
Yeah, yeah, totally, yeah.
Well, Ceazor, I want to thank you for joining me. And again, I apologize. It wasn't exactly how we had planned, but I really enjoyed the conversation, the discussion that we had, and I appreciate you joining me. And if anybody, didn't look at what I have pinned up on top, it is Ceazor's tweet when he looked at carbon. It'll take you straight to his YouTube. You can watch it there. Check out his other videos also. And the link to the carbon Twitter is there as well with our other docs and white paper and stuff. So if you haven't checked them out, definitely recommend checking both of those out. And Ceazor, thank you again. I really appreciate you and our conversation.
Oh, I appreciate you having me. Thanks so much. I can always use the extra exposure, right?
Well, and we'll do it again when Mark is available. So
yeah, sounds great. We can speak on specifics then. Yeah.
For sure. Thank you so much, and thank you to all the listeners for joining us. We'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay.